Got it. Okay. Well, then we'll go this way. It'll be a fun one-on-one. Alex,
Good. Hopefully
maybe.
get some more people. I know.
Yeah.
And if not,
coming a whole bunch. Goes out of town. He's like,
oh, you know who said was gonna be here? Dawson.
They'll probably trickle in late. It's Friday morning.
I
That's what it is.
gave him a tough time because Dawson wouldn't show up to my classes, but called me right afterwards and asked me a question. I'm like, Dawson, you didn't come to my class. Why am I talking to you? I don't think I have time. Okay, super excited.
he
Huh?
got 3 closings, by the way. He's like,
That's
well,
so exciting. He's a good kid. And he just can't make it to a 9 o'clock class. He's extra tan this year. He's nice and been boating a lot. Well, quick introduction because we are on borrowed time. We don't have a ton of time this morning. Life is happening. So we're going to make sure we make the most of the time that we have here. My name is Angie. I've been with KW about 10 years. And in my past life, I ran a restaurant. So I actually loved working in and still love the idea of working in a restaurant. So it's probably before your time because you do look like you're a little bit young, but the Village Inn that was in Orem, I was their training GM and I would train the managers to go out to the other restaurants. And so I really do love and appreciate the training program here and the KW has been a big part of our success in the company and just in our lives, in our business. You've probably heard that you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
mm-hmm.
And if you look at that, you're probably the sum of their weight, their health, their wealth, their family values, it starts to get that way. We're doing things different today. We're gonna be here. I decided that hopefully it can record. That was a big piece of it, is trying to make sure we could get a recording on it. You guys know Alex?
Yes.
Awesome.
I haven't met you. What's your name?
I'm Amy.
Amy. It's great to meet you.
Amy.
Alex.
So we're gonna be on purpose today because we have 1 hour for our class. We're gonna make the most of it. It's make and receive offers. Let's see if I can make my computer to do what we want it to. Sorry guys, we are skipping through stuff because we're gonna go fast. A big part of what we're gonna do today actually does have to do with our belief systems though, because we're doing make and receive offers, win-win or no deal, integrity in all actions, customers always come first, commitment in all things, communication, we always want to seek first to understand, creativity, ideas before results, teamwork, together everyone achieves more, trust starts with honesty, equity, opportunity for all, and success results through others. So interesting. We don't talk about these enough. I actually think that it's a huge part of what will make your transaction successful. It'll make your business successful. So it'll be interesting as we think about these. If I had enough time, we'd come back to them and go, how did that play out in this transaction for you? You guys are both negotiating contracts right now, basically, right?
Yes, and I would love to talk through one of the deal because it was so stressful.
I felt like I took the good things that you guys would have taken pictures of on the screen and I printed them. So, because I feel like there's some really great checklists in here. And it's interesting as we talk about making and receiving offers, we can talk about how it all plays out as a buyer, but then all you have to do is go like, okay, I'm the seller. How did that feel? And it will impact you now how you behave as a buyer agent and what you say, how you do, what happens. And so it's interesting. We might spend 75% on one side, but of our time, but it plays both sides. So this is an interesting quote that they have. Some of the best agents I know love nothing more than a difficult negotiation that gives them a chance to really shine and acknowledge object. You're looking at that like that is not how I feel. Okay, I'm gonna share with you guys something. I took a certified negotiations expert class. It cost me, I think, $300 to take it. Maybe, I don't know, 8 years ago, 7 years ago. best money I ever spent. It was worth the 2 days, but I'll give you all of the insights today of like what that is. And when I started, I thought the very best negotiators were like hard nosed. They were going to make it happen for their clients, and that's what it was going to be. And I sure messed up some deals because that's the way I went into my negotiations. One of the most important things I learned in that class is instead of negotiations looking like this, they really need to look like this. The minute that you can step on the same side as them and see and feel what that other person is, you will have way more success. That is actually the art of really good negotiators, is just stepping on the same side of who they're negotiating with. See and feel their perspective, satisfy what they need, and you will get what you want. Yes.
I have a seller who over the weekend, it was under contract, then it fell out. They changed their mind. So then this past weekend, I went back to all of the original offers. We had multiple offers and let them know. We got 2 more offers this past weekend. And my client was like, okay, I want to move with the first one. They put a 3% VAC and I want 0. We put 0 on the form, but I prepared him that it probably wouldn't be 0, but we could put 0. I had to call the agent and tell her that, he said, I'll go to 1%, but I want you to start with 0. And then anyways, we were talking about this and I was just like, I understand where you're coming from, but remember, you're going to be looking for a home soon, and then you're going to be the buyer, and you're going to have to come up with all the money, and you're going to have to do this. And I was putting him in his shoes so he could see the other side. And he said, well, it seems like you're now siding with the buyer. And I'm like, no, I am representing you, but I wanted you to see the whole picture so that you can understand. Anyways, I really tried to step on that other side, and then he was like,
so the piece is, are you open to some feedback? You're nervous.
I
There's
totally
the feedback.
I love feedback.
Well, that is like, first, make sure that we're open for feedback. Second is there's 2 people in that transaction you're negotiating with. You're negotiating with a buyer's agent, but you actually are negotiating with our clients. And you're not going to do it the same. So you tried to get him to go on their side. You need to go on his side. That's who you're negotiating with, is your client to start. In that conversation, it's you and him. He wants 0, you want 3. You need to go like this with him, not get him to go over to that. Those are separate negotiations. So I want you to think about that in that way, which I'm not against all of that you just did, but
suggested 1.5.
realizing and going, oh man, it's gotta suck right now that you're having that, that this is $30,000 and you're trying to figure out how to make this work. Right? So get on the same side of him, ask more questions to him about why that's important. Would he be willing? And why was that the offer that he wanted to move forward with? What was important to him about that offer? Why did he speed?
They're really motivated. I know they want this.
They are motivated, seller, but you know what? Right now they're motivated, and that agent's motivated to help you get it closed because they're going to get paid. If they don't get paid, do you think that they're going to be as motivated to help you reach your goal? Right. And just help him realize why that is that way. And you know what I find, seller, is that most of the time, really good agents will get it closed. We do need to honor what that looks like. I'm not sure they're going to move forward if that's what you choose to counter back. But you know what? I work for you. So at the end of the day, I will send that counter. I just want you to be prepared. They may walk away. Are you okay with that?
I prepared them that they may walk away.
Yeah. And just work through what that looks like. Help share that and get on their side. I can picture your seller from your post on WhatsApp. I already know, because I've had sellers who are like, I can't let a home inspector into my house. They're going to ruin it. I was like, oh, I know who she's working with. So I totally understand. That's why it's like you actually are negotiating with him. I feel you. So even though I offer feedback like it's easy, I know it's not. I know you're working with a difficult person. I know
Tough negotiator. He is.
I know you're working with a difficult person.
Yeah.
So I can see it. So I make it sound easy, but I want to honor that I know.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a tricky one. And
He wasn't mad at me. I took that as, oh my gosh, he just said I'm siding with the buyer, and I didn't say anything for a little while. But he wasn't mad. He was just
no, just like how does that feel? And I might ask more questions. So are you willing to, if they're willing to go up in price, would you include that expense? What other options do we have? How else do we get to your bottom line and get to the other? I love coming up with creative solutions to get there. I am like in the heat of it out in my project in Saratoga. I'm sure, and in Mapleton. My seller probably gets super frustrated, but I will figure out ways to get to that buyer's bottom line and that seller's bottom line and try and get everything and still get paid. Because there's a lot of times I'm installing a water softener this morning in the process to get my deal closed and help support myself. Like we do all sorts of crazy stuff to get the deals done. And come up with it. There's more than one. There's more than one option. And not all offers are created equal. Just because they're the same price, like you just said, that one was important because of speed. And that was important to him. This is to help me stay on track.
Angie, I
Yeah.
was just wanting, as I was like writing what you were saying, now this puts this in a totally different perspective for me because you said, once I step on the other side of the other side, that's where true negotiation happens. So I was thinking, like Amy, I was thinking, oh, the buyer's side, because I'm a seller, I'm a seller's agent right now. And so I'm thinking, oh, step on their side and think how they would think. But you're saying step on the side of your
because there's two people you're negotiating with. You're negotiating with your client and you're negotiating with the opposite side. You actually are negotiating with your client to get them to take that offer. And on both of these, the only way that you can step on their side, what do you got to do?
On the side of our seller.
On either. When you start to step on their same side, what does that mean?
Express how they're feeling.
Maybe. How are you going to know that?
Just have an open mind.
Asking questions.
You got to ask questions. All of this starts with lots of questions. So when you talk about script practice good questions to understand what somebody else wants and why that's important to them. And typically they'll tell you and then go deeper. Figure out more, explore why that is important to them. Why was offer one important to you, seller? It was speed. What is speed going to do for you? What happens if they walk away? Are we going to still be on the same timeline if speed is important to you? Are there other ways we can guarantee that this is going to close and close faster? Is there a way we can still close faster with the other offer? Could we look at challenging their lender and say, hey, my lender will close it in 21 days. You guys wrote 28. Can your lender close in 21 days? Can we call that lender and guarantee that we can get it closed? What things can we do to give him exactly what he wants and why he wants that? But that's where stepping on the same side is. We won't be able to validate their feelings until we know what they are and we know why they feel that way, why it's important to them. So that's just like the really important piece. So you're going to do that with your seller. And you're going to keep working with your seller or your buyer on the same side. And then you're going to have to then figure out that same piece. So as a buyer's agent, you want to do that same thing to the seller or the seller's agent. Some will share, some won't. Do your best. What I also found early on in that negotiations class really helped as well was that make them want to do business with you. Don't be a jerk. Be easy to talk to. Answer your phone. Like make it so they want to work with you as another agent. A lot of times when stuff gets heated, I do throw emojis into the mix of our text messages because I just want to be the easy one. I want to be the one that they're like, oh, that's the nice agent. I've gotten 42 phone calls today. I'll answer yours because I just want to be easy and easygoing and help support them. But you'll get on the phone and some are like, not going to tell you why. So when you go to make an offer, it's a little checklist. When as a buyer's agent, when we go to make an offer, there's we finally get in the house and they go, oh yeah, I really like this one. And you're like, awesome. Should we put something together on it? There's a few phone calls that you need to make. And I am probably high B. I lived in the 2020 era of craziness that you wrote offers right there. You went to the car, wrote it up, sent it. It was very intense. My coach really highlighted something for me that this year has brought out slower movers because they feel more comfortable. During COVID or during that crazy market, it was very high D's, people who are drivers, people who were doing it fast, and people who are risk takers. They were willing to put 50 grand down. They were willing to go non-refundable earnest money. So our high C, our stable people, and our analytical people totally went back and reclused and didn't. And now this year, all of the high C's and high S's are out in the market. That was very interesting to me. And realizing the way we communicate with them is different. Because I'm like, great, we're writing an offer. I'm gonna go call the lender. We're gonna get it done. I'll send it to you in 15 minutes. And that's not necessarily the way they feel. That was really interesting aha this week that I was like, huh. So you have to work at their pace a little better. But for me, there's 3 calls we make. I call the listing agent. 1, I want to make sure it's still available. There's a lot of times we were showing and it's under contract. Like we just showed and they just accepted an offer. But I just want to make sure, is the home still available? And if I can't get a hold of them, then I'll text them. Same question. Is your home still available? Are you guys negotiating any offers right now? And I like those 2 questions because when we honor them, when we say, is your home still available? It makes it feel like, oh, good, it's a good house. And are you negotiating offers? Gives them a chance to just share if they have low offers. So are you negotiating any offers right now? Sometimes they will be actively negotiating. I find agents will tell me stuff like, we got a super low offer. We got one, but we let it lapse. Oh, well, what was it about that offer that made it so that you guys didn't accept it, right? Like, what does that look like? And sometimes they won't answer, right? I remember helping Grace with her first deal that she did with the Wild Team. She'd offered on one of their properties. And she was like, oh, they, sooner or later when you're like, I just need to know, how did she put it? They had said they'd had multiple offers and they were negotiating back and forth. I'm like, that means they don't have a full priced offer. If they did, they'd accept it. You know, that's not a full price offer. Just ask, what does the offer need to look like for us to get accepted today? There's good news and bad news. They'll tell you. And now you got to go negotiate with your buyer to get it to look like that. Because your buyer's like, well, I was 20,000 off. That's okay. I work for you. We'll write up whatever you want. I just want to let you know if you're going to be sad tomorrow that this house is gone, I know this will get accepted today. It's up to you. And you know what worries me? If we don't do, like what I found is if we don't get it accepted today, there's maybe no other offers right now. But the minute we have another offer come in, I promise you the value will go up 10 to 15,000 because now we're competing. So it's better for us to get it in and get it accepted. I don't want to compete. And they go, okay. So you don't have to. We can try your 20 grand low. Just realize it gives opportunity for other people to come in and you might end up having to pay full price. You okay with that? So yes, go ahead.
I was just going to mention one of the hardest things for me that I stressed out the most about. This is my first deal, okay? And so your first deal is like, okay, this is going to be, you know, easy. I've got this massive team. I know this stuff. I'm my age, I have a lot of life experience and I've been in real estate a long time. But on this side, I'm like, I'm not overly confident, but once it went on the market and my sellers had left, my clients who are my good friends, they left and then it went on, they moved and then it went on the market. And then we got our first offer in the first 24 hours. And I was like, oh my gosh. But before I had listed it, I had gotten like 3 CMAs from people, even Dean. I called Dean. I never called Dean. I said, I really am stressed about this. My clients think their, home is worth this. And I've done the CMAs and it's like a $50,000 difference. So I went to 3 people and all of our numbers lined up to be
lower.
Yeah, way lower than, because some realtor came to them trying to get their business before me. And he's like, oh yeah, I could sell your house for this much money without giving them any data. So then my job was to now educate them on what a CMA is. And I'm not telling them what their house is worth. The market is going to tell them. And so I was in this strange position at first. So then I'm like ultra stressed about that listing price. And once they decide, I said, here's the bottom and here's the top of that range of where that list, what the market is showing your house is worth. And once it went live, it was just constant, like juggling. I had an unrepresented buyer. So then I'm making an offer for someone. Well, and I'm like, this is like a conflict of interest. And it was just like a whirlwind of craziness. But back to what you were saying, there was a listing agent that I'll never forget my first phone call. She called me and she was asking me these questions that I just typed down. And she's like, is the house still available? And are you negotiating? And I'm like, what am I supposed to say? Like, I know I'm not supposed to say some things. And then I just like had these thoughts of everything now that then I got my second phone call and I'm like, okay.
I'm more confident.
But then I had, a series of, many realtors, buyer's agents call me and I got to a place where they were now competing for, they flat out said, what are your other offers? She just said, and I said, well, I will say they're all full price. And then they said, are there any contingencies? I said,
good questions. Yeah. So those are good questions. Are there any contingencies? Because even though someone's a full price offer, if they have a house to sell, that's a less good offer, right? Is it a full price cash offer? Is it like, what else does that look like? And you can share as long as your seller has given you permission to share. You can tell them everything as long as your seller has given you that permission. Same with your buyer. But it's like, if your buyer hasn't said that you can tell them that you have $1 million in the bank, then you don't get to say that. You get to work on, that's your fiduciary to what that looks like. And sometimes it helps and sometimes it doesn't. You'll also find when you start to get into those situations, when you're priced right, good condition, good neighborhood, you're tri-level, weren't you? Is it a tri-level?
No.
2-story?
No, it was a 2-story.
I saw it and was like, oh, it's a super cute house.
Yeah.
And there's things that happen. So it's so fun to feel both sides of that. And now you know why sometimes listing agents don't answer the phone. They actually don't want to talk to you. They'll give you too much information or they're letting it build. They just need some space. Because all of a sudden you're like, okay, get it. Okay. And it changes. So you heard from the moment you got your first offer, once you got the second offer, that first offer, now the value of the home just went up. That's why as a buyer's agent, man, get it under contract, make it happen right now. Because even though the house has been on the market 42 days, something weird happens. I promise you're going to make an offer. And if we're not fast enough, you're going to be competing. And I watch it over and over again. And it's the weirdest thing. I don't know if it's law of attraction or what happens there. So call the seller's agent though. Those list of questions. What's important to the seller? Sometimes that irritates me because I'm like, it's such a general question. However, it's important. Is time more important? Is price? Is net? Are they willing to wait? Is security? Is ease? sometimes we just don't work with jerks. Like that literally is what takes place of like, that one's higher, but let me warn you, seller, that agent was a jerk. I just need you to know it's going to be a hard transaction. Who were we working with recently? There's been several that we were doing little houses. Ooh, it was our little South Jordan house. And the agent just was a jerk. I ended up with 2 offers in. One agent, very kind, very respectful, asked lots of great questions, was willing to understand where we were at. And it wasn't an agent, it was actually a unrepresented buyer. And he was so difficult. And even though she might have netted $2,000 more, we went back to the other cash offer and said, you know what? We really would like to work with you. Is there any way you'd match this offer? We really would just like to work with a nice, good, respectful person. And a lot of times that takes place. Now, Mason, his name Barney? Mason. He called me. He was a buyer's agent on one of our listings last year. And it was a popular listing that we had. I probably fielded 10 phone calls. I told everybody exactly what we needed. He was the only agent that actually wrote the offer that did the things I asked. So it's really great that you ask what's important, but if you're not willing to go back and negotiate with your client and tell them and get that to happen, it's actually worse. Does that make sense? So if I say, yeah, net is most important and you're 20 grand low, like, well, why'd you ask if you weren't going to help get there? So have that understanding. Is I think that's partly why like fielding those calls is frustrating, because I had somebody that security was most important to them, that we were trying to get under contract on another house and we were selling one and getting into the other. Most important to us was actually security. It wasn't highest net. Of course, they'd like the highest net. We wanted the highest net possible, but security was more important. And what else was more important is we weren't under contract yet. We needed someone who was going to give us an option for a 30-day lease back in case, so that we could go out and buy another house. And if you could do those things, and security for me comes through non-refundable earnest money. It may not be upon acceptance, but at least after the inspections. If you don't put skin in the game at that point, you are not secure to me. So if you don't have that much confidence in your lender, talk to mine. And if my lender says no, then like we shouldn't do business together. So like those are important pieces on the listing side, or like asking both sides. You're kind of catching both ends of that. So we call the agent, make sure the house is still available. We call our lender. If we're the buyer, we want to call our lender. We want to know how much are the closing costs going to be, and what is the shortest time possible that you feel confident about our financing and appraisal deadline. The shortest time possible that he feels confident about our financing and appraisal deadline. And the reason is I want the lender to pick that date. He can then, or she can be held accountable to that date. I didn't just pull a number out and went, everyone does 21 days. I want to go, what's the date that you feel the most comfortable with our financing and appraisal? And then I ask another question. How confident are you, lender, about any earnest money going hard after the inspections? And he'll say, oh, it's always the buyer's choice. Absolutely. I want to know how confident you are in their financial situation. And a lender who's done their work will tell you. You'll hear it. It may not be in words, but you'll hear them backtrack, or you'll hear them say, yes, I've checked their W-2s. I've sent them through automated underwriting. They're solid. They're W-2 people. They're not self-employed. I don't see any red flags. However, it's the buyer's choice. I just want to know how confident they sound. And I do that actually on both sides. So I probably have already had that conversation with my buyer's lender, but if I'm the listing agent, that's the conversation I have with the lenders. And I have that before we accept the offer. So Mason came over and worked for us after that. So he actually, he offered on a second property of mine, the little basement house. I don't know if you guys remember the basement house. And then they canceled. And when he canceled, I was like, okay, I'll accept your cancellation, but you got to come meet with my team leader. So he ended up over here.
That's how he came over to KW.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Yeah, I was excited. He's cool. He's interesting. And he's a good agent. I was like, who is training you? Like, you actually listened to what I said. You did all the right things. You're good. I only want good agents working here. Like, why aren't you here? It took probably 6 months. We ended up getting him here.
Is he on your team?
No,
Okay.
just part of KW.
Yeah.
And so when we get those offers in, we're asking, so I'm so sorry, I'm jumping around, but the same happens if I have multiple offers in, I am calling the agent and asking the same kind of things. Agent, what's important to your buyer? Tell me about how you guys came up with your offer price. Have you guys written any other offers? Is this your first? Do you have any other offers out right now? They won't tell you unless you ask. And they may even be like, they may not even answer, but you'll feel if they're being honest. Who's doing their loan form? They've already sent me a pre-approval letter, but who's doing their loan form? And if they're like, I don't know. I sent you the pre-approval letter. Oh, okay. So is this a lender that the buyers picked, or is this someone you've worked with before? So I ask a lot about those types of questions. And so do you know where they're at in the lending process? The loan is going to be like probably 70% of your contracts that are canceled are lending issues, or you could have solved by being more particular or more intense in a nice way. You smile when you ask these questions. They can hear that. Great. So that it sounds like, and I might even say, it sounds like you guys are just getting started. I'll give you the lender a call. Do you know if they've already done have their documents in, and do you know if they've already done taxes and gone into underwriting? And you'll get a sense. They'll tell you. And then the secret about all these questions, I just fired them all off, but I want you to know the secret is to ask it and then sit quiet. Let the silence do the heavy lifting, and you're going to feel really awkward, but whoever talks first loses. And let them. But they'll usually, especially newer agents or less experienced, will just all the stuff out and give you all the information. Then call the lender though and ask those questions. Great. So are you just getting started with these buyers? They may have given you a letter, but it's worthless. Are you and I try to be respectful, like, oh, are you just getting started with these buyers? Ask the same questions. Have they written any offers? Do you know if they're negotiating any offers? What type of loan program are they doing? Actually just ask. Have you sent them through automated underwriting, and have you seen their taxes? That is just a huge one for them. And then that same question. So I always preface it, I know it's the buyer's choice. I just want to ask you, how confident are you about the buyer's earnest money going non-refundable after inspections?
Then it's the listing agent, you would have to ask
the buyer's lender.
Oh, the lender.
The lender. I don't ask the agent. I ask the lender, and I want to have that voice conversation, and you'll hear how they feel.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to have to, we're doing a rapid credit rescore. They aren't going to say those words to you, but you'll hear if they're doing some funny business behind the scenes to try to make it work.
How confident the earnest money going hard
after inspections or after due diligence. And then they'll usually even be like, well, we never know what the appraisal is going to be. I'm like, I know. This is always the buyer's choice. I just want to know where you're at on their file. And then sit quiet. And then I also ask as the listing agent, what's the shortest amount of time that you feel confident with a financing and appraisal deadline? And again, I don't necessarily tell them what's on my offer, but what I can do, because I represent the seller, is I'm going to shore up that contract. If the agent put 21 days and the lender put 18 or told me 18, I'm going to counter back and get 18. We're protecting our seller. One thing I learned really early on is those dates on the offers that we accept matter. I didn't know it. We always make these mistakes, right? I didn't know how bad it was to accept a 30-day due diligence on my first listing. That meant that the buyer had 30 days that they could back out for any reason whatsoever, and my seller got nothing. And we just wasted 30 days on the market. She had another mortgage payment, like all these things. I was like, ew, I made a mess of that. So I got better at I didn't like the way that felt. How can I do it different? How can I protect them better? What can I do? And what I know is money matters. Those deadlines matter. We're in a market where we don't get as much flexibility because we're like, yes, we finally got enough, depending on what we're working with. But the thing I know for a seller is the better we show, if we're priced right and in good condition, we will stay in control of the contract and we will set terms. So it's okay, seller, if you would like to price at the top of the market, but just realize we might not have as much control over what's happening. So if it's important to you that you move to XYZ by December, I think we should price it right. So I hope those are good questions. I'm sorry we've jumped around. So I call the listing agent, then I call the lender, and then I call and talk with my buyer. And we work on strategy. Now that I've gathered that information, so I can get an idea when we're in the house kind of what they want to offer. But I always say, let me call the listing agent and find out what's important to the seller so that we write the very best offer for you. So I'll get some ideas about what they're thinking. But if they say they want to offer 20 grand low and I just talked to the listing agent and we have multiple offers, I've set the wrong expectation. So I try not to get too much into the weeds right then about what they want to offer. I want to gather all the information and put the very best offer together that's going to give us the best chance of winning or getting them the house that they love. So
I love that too, because then when you're showing homes and they say, well, what do you think we should start with? It's just that.
And I just say it is just
to get more information. I'll I'll call this person. I'll run some more comps.
And then I always say, I'll gather a little bit more information because we want to make sure, it might not even be available. That might be something I say to a buyer while they're standing in the house they love. It might not even be available. So let me just see what we can do to get you guys this house. And it's not that I'm trying to be jerky. I just have to set the right expectation as a buyer because the buyer wants to pay as little as possible. The seller wants to get as much as possible. So if I can help them get in the right mind space to get the house they want. And I also have learned that my job as a fiduciary is to get them what they want. I used to think it was to get them the very best price. If they lose the house they want because I tried to save them 5 grand, was I their fiduciary? So we sometimes think negotiation is, I'm going to get the very best deal. We have to step back and go, actually, my job is to get exactly what they want and just step that back. So those are my 3 people. We talked about that. Let's see. There's a ton of stuff. Yep. Build rapport, inquire about activity, all the same things we just talked about. Now, when you're actually writing your offer, go to the MLS and look at the agent full report. It has a lot of information on there. I should have said this before you call the agent. Read the whole listing. Read the agent remarks, read the exclusion remarks, read the showing, read all of it. Because the agents that put all that stuff in there and then you call irritates them. But if you call and say, hey, I saw in the remarks that they're moving and they need a lease back. I wanted to get a little bit more information about what that is. Where are they headed? Why is that important to them? What's their timeline? How can we make that possible? Is different than like you didn't do the work up front and now you expect them to tell you. The other thing on there is when you're writing the offer, there's an owner name on there. Not everybody fills that in, but the agents who put it on there use it. Same thing. I see that it's the Perkins on the owner. Is that right? Like, is there any other names I need to include? You can go check county records, but so often I've actually had county records be wrong. So a lot of times if it's not there and I can't get the agent to tell me who the sellers is, I do just put owner of record. I'd rather have it be that than the wrong person's name. But
you always confirm.
I usually confirm if it's on the listing, I'll usually just use it unless I'm trying to have something to share with them that I've done my work.
I remember if I listed their name myself.
I do on all of mine because my point, some people think it's so private. It's not. It's on county records. Like, just give them the name. Like, I have people you'll read it, be like, owner's name, nice people. I'm like, you guys are so dumb.
Was yours listed?
I don't remember.
It's Jeanette did ours.
Yeah.
So that's like the one thing I'm like, oh, I need to go look and see if it's.
Let's hit ahas here real quick. And ahas are important because they help you remember, but they also share and highlight for somebody else. So everybody's got an aha, and it helps me know my time here was worth it.
Oh, okay. I will say mine.
Okay.
Like I just type and type because everything was golden. But you said something and it was just like, boom, I got to do that. And I know this goes back to your negotiation. And you said, let silence do the heavy lifting. I struggle with that.
Because we wait and we go, oh, did they hear? Am I feeling just
are they mad?
Just sit.
Yeah.
They're thinking. And the longer the silence, actually, the better the answer you'll probably get on both both our clients and the agent.
So I was more familiar as a buyer's agent who to call, done that before, called the listing agent. Haven't called the buyer's agent. No, sorry, the lender. I don't know. But I'm more familiar with that, but that was a big aha as the listing agent. We looked at the offers, we talked about them, we did the spreadsheet and compared our multiple offers. I didn't call the lender beforehand.
The other thing that happens as a listing agent, you'll set the tone for what you expect during your transaction with the lender. They're like, oh, you're on it. So that's how I met Eric Smart. I was the listing agent, and I think I asked him that question. But it sets the tone that you expect them to answer your call, and you expect updates, and you expect to be engaged, and they will work on your file before they'll work on others because they don't want to make you mad, especially if they gave you the date that they're going to close, and then they can't ask for an extension. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And if they do, guess what happens? They call you personally and tell you what's wrong. But I had to learn the hard way not to do those things. And I had contracts fall out. We'd get right to the end. And I'm like, oh, I was supposed to actually make sure the appraisal got ordered. So I
Well, I think Jeanette does it.
I find she probably does, but I do find that it's valuable to call, as soon as you pass your due diligence, I call the listing agent or the lender and I just ask, has the appraisal been ordered? I might even send those emails, text messages, or calls if I'm worried. The appraisal being ordered is the sign that they're moving forward. They're not going to spend money on the appraisal until that's ordered. So if they haven't ordered it, there is a red flag. And if they said they ordered it, this is another piece of nugget. This is important for you guys. If the lender said they ordered it, but you have not gotten a call within 24 hours as the listing agent, something's wrong. Either they're lying or it's stuck in the system. Do not keep waiting. If you're at 48 hours and you haven't heard, you reach back out to the lender and be like, it's so weird. I haven't heard from the lender, or I haven't heard from the appraiser yet. You said you ordered it, right? And they'll say, oh yeah, and it got picked up. I'm like, are you sure? Because I'm surprised I haven't heard from them yet. You will hear almost instantly when they order it. And if you don't, there's something that's wrong. And I can tell you, and screws up your deal bad. And every single time. So this happened just even recently where I'm like, I promise I still haven't heard. And we're 10 days past. So every day for 10 days, I call the lender. Because if you don't get that, they have 10 days to get it in. So if they don't show up to your property for 10 whole days, and then it takes 10 days to get it back, and you're already on day 21 when you start, you're past. So it's like, I usually like, there was something really funky. They were trying to, okay, yours, good aha. Did you have ahas already? You shared lender, calling lender?
Yeah, before you accept an offer as the listing agent.
Because you can't
The
cancel.
research.
As a listing, as a buyer, let's say we screw up an offer, right? We can still cancel. We still have opportunity. It's less detrimental than as the listing side. You can get roped up into one and it really affects your seller and you can't cancel it. And you're like, oh, so really being. Mhm.
The other one I love when you're with a buyer and they're asking you like, well, we want to put an offer in. What do you think the price would be? And that's a hard one as a new agent. And I've been able to say, well, let me run some CMAs and
Mhm.
I love, let me see if it's available. Let me do some research. You said it so well, like I'll talk to the
Listing agent and find out what's important to the seller and kind of see their motivation.
Yeah.
So I'll just share some of that. I'll see what motivation looks like and what's important to them. And then let's touch base at 7 or whatnot. And what's nice, we have a little bit of space. Don't wait 3 days. I still believe the emotions and the honeymoon phase at midnight, it's gone. When you go to sleep and you wake up, you're now anxious and it's stressful instead of like, oh, this is exciting. Let's write an offer. Don't let them go to bed. So.
Oh, as a buyer's agent.
As a buyer's agent.
Okay, that's good.
That I do think I learned that too when I first started because I was showing and showing and showing and I couldn't get everyone would be like, yeah, I think we like it, but we want to go home and think about it. And then they would never offer. And then I finally was like, I am going to write the offer inside the kitchen at the kitchen table. That's what we're going to do. And
you were showing. Oh, smart.
That's I was like, I brought printed things and I was like, oh, you guys like this one? Well, let's put together an offer. And I just sat down at the table and pulled out my paper. I screwed up that offer because I wasn't as schooled as I needed to be. But we finally got one written, and getting one written is like half the battle. Your first contract, like it's just challenging. Yeah. I learned as well that I have really bad handwriting and I don't like to write in front of people. So I've learned how to just pull it up on my computer and start writing on my computer. And instead of asking if they want to, I'm just like, well, great, let's get it started. And I will just open it up and start working on it, depending on how it is. If it's less intense now than it once was, but get practice writing the offer so that you can get fast and good at it. My first one took 8 hours. I can probably do an offer in about 15 minutes now.
It takes so long, right?
10 hours.
Because you are having to read and think about every word.
Yeah.
But think about like the first time you drove a car, that same thing happened. You were like, where's the blinker? How do I shift? And now you just get there. Like you have to honor that you had a bunch of time driving. You got to do the same thing. If you aren't putting the work into that, you're not going to get good at it. Alex, quick aha from you.
I like what you said about getting as much information as possible before, and I think you said it in the context of a buyer who's going to make the offer to the seller, but on both sides it's probably equally as helpful to just get as many variables on both sides that you can. Some things you kind of have to hold your chest, it sounds like, so you don't give away too much information. So that was good to know. But then some things are good to disclose to the other side that help make the transaction go further. Then the other thing that I wrote down that I really liked was you're trying to get what the client wants and not what you think is the best situation.
That I've lost a few houses in that, and it was sad for me to watch it. I was trying to get such a good deal, and then someone came in and wrote a decent offer, and I lost it. Or like what the seller needed. I didn't know that. Good. Thanks. Those are great ahas for me too. Something that was making me think of. Hang on. We are not going to review the contract. Hang on. Writing an offer. Where are we at? The second page 2. So preparing to write the offer, writing the offer. So gathering all the information we talked about briefly, getting your pre-approval letter, your closing date, home warranty, really, okay, learning the REPC is super important. So after I screwed up that first offer, so I had wrote the earnest money amount in the purchase price part. I was so stressed. I remember sitting in the day area. It's like 9 o'clock at night and I'm calling Dean. I'm like, Dean, I screwed up. I had the right price in one spot, but you know how they're supposed to match in that section? Yeah. He's like, it's going to be fine. You're going to be okay. We got it all worked. We closed that deal. But after that, I was talking to one of the agents during the process of it. And I remember I thought he was so rude, but it probably changed my life. He was like, well, did you read it? And that's all he said. And I felt so stupid. I was like, well, I guess no. So then I studied one section of the REPC every day. And I was in a very busy life at the time. So you're going to laugh and I'm just going to share it. But I actually kept a REPC in the bathroom and I was like, all right, this is my place. This is where I'm going to study. Like,
yeah, that's a good idea.
Just a place of like, we have time. Let's not pretend we don't. And I just took one. The second thing is if you can then take that and teach that paragraph to your kids, your friends, your parents, teach what it means as if they're a client. What does this section on earnest money mean? What does this section on settlement and closing mean? What does this section? All of that will give you so much confidence, like really get confident with what's inside the REPC. And then this starts to get faster and faster. So review the contract, be sure buyer understands the contract. I personally go through the REPC during my buyer consultation because I believe that if they know what it's going to look like when the time comes, they'll be able to make an offer easily. They already have all the questions answered. So it's one of the things I do in my buyer consult. I just say, I know we've gone over a lot of stuff, but would you guys like to know what it actually really looks like to write an offer? And they say yes. I'm like, great. So let's just pretend. It's easier for you guys to picture this. You guys just told me you want 4 beds, 3 bathrooms, cute tri-level. So I want you to picture that. And we're standing in that house and you're like, this is the one, Angie, get me this house. I want you to feel really confident that when I send this to you on DocuSign and you're on your cell phone, that you can just click, click, click and accept it. So why don't we go through what that looks like right now? And I take we have the REPC and we go through and I teach them about the different pieces of it and what it means. I also will talk to them then about how to write a competitive offer. So when we get to earnest money, my friend Ritz, there is a recording out there somewhere where we talk about the REPC, I believe, and I go through it line by line like that, but where I just go through, do you know what earnest money is? Well, let me explain earnest money. And with earnest money, let's think about it. If we are competing for this house and we both offer $300,000 for it, but you guys offer $5,000 in earnest money and somebody else offers $1,000, even though we're the same price, which one's better? They go, oh, well, the 5,000. I'm like, okay, well, this is a lot like a video game. I want you to know we're not going to pick up all of the points along the way, but when we write an offer, we want to pick up as many points as possible. You guys might not have $5,000 and it's okay. There's going to be other things in this contract that we have to pick up those points if we can. So we run through each section of what it looks like. And what I know, buyer, is sometimes it's not always the highest offer that wins. It's these other things we're talking about. And we won't know what it's going to be until we find the house, because what's important to the seller, one seller is going to be different than another. So I can't tell you what it's going to look like till we find the right one. And so it's helpful because then as we're standing in the house and they go, oh, Angie, get me this house. Do all the things you told us to do. Great. How much earnest money can you guys do? We also talk about in that meeting, in a buyer consult, if we're competing, now I'm not going to do this if we're not, but if we're competing, we have to think about putting some non-refundable earnest money down after our inspections. Now it's important you guys get to the lender and we're 100% confident because I don't want to risk your money. But we go through, if we're competing and we're both $300,000 and you guys have money actually go clear to the last page and where it talks about the timelines. the seller disclosures, the due diligence, the financing and appraisal, and the settlement. That's actually where I talk about the non-refundable earnest money. So normally it's 7 days for 3 to 5 days for seller disclosures, 7 to 10 days on due diligence. And I stop right then and go, let's say we're both competing. We both offer $300,000 for this house. But you guys have 7 days to do your home inspections, and the other people have 14 days. How much do you think that the seller loves that their home is pulled off of the market for 14 or 21 days? And you can cancel for any reason you want, and they get nothing. They go, oh, I'm like, so that's a thing we can do, that if we don't have more money and we can't offer more money, this is something that we can do that costs nothing. We just have to be ready. So let's think about it. If you guys can get your inspections done in 7 days and somebody else is 14, you are already a better contract, right? So I get them prepped for that. And I can usually get you an inspection scheduled within 48 hours. So we start to go, can we do it in 7 days? 7 to 10 is probably like what I write. A lot of people write 14. I want it tight for them and for us, because we also know they're not going to order the appraisal until the inspection's done. And since we tighten up that, we can tighten up the financing and appraisal deadline. We can tighten up closing and like those pieces. So we walk through all of those pieces with them during a buyer consult. And then it just sets all the right expectations. So when it's time, we just go.
Wow.
And they,
That is.
well, and it's cool because they have the information. It's easy for them to make this big decision. If they don't know what it looks like, they will freeze. They don't know what's next, but you've already laid it out. Now they won't remember because it takes 6 times to hear it 75%. But that's why you have to start with learning the contract, because you have to be able to teach it to them and say it in ways that they understand. This was really valuable for me because my friend wasn't in real estate, and I would say it and she goes, I don't get it, do it again. Until I could explain it in a way that made sense to her. So pick somebody that's not in real estate. You guys can help each other, but really the value, the gift is going to somebody who knows nothing about it and help them understand it.
So how long, I mean, buyer consults are already like an hour for me, without going through the Rep C. I may need to adjust.
You may look at that and decide. I end up probably 90 minutes a lot of the times, but I also spend less. I find that it's more valuable for me to do that than to spend a ton of time looking at houses with them on there. So my team makes fun of me because I am like 5 minutes warm. Tell me about your life. Tell me about why this is important to you. Then we play what's most important game, because they told me they want 4 beds, 3 baths, 2-car garage, and their budget's 300. You're like, so then I go, well, what's more important to you then? Is being in a single family house more important than a garage? And I go down and I start to weigh all their pieces. And if you had to choose, which is most important? And I don't tell them a ton. I might pull up 1 or 2 and go, this is really what 300,000 looks like. So we have to maybe readjust what we're looking at. And I spend a little time there. I do my buyer broker agreement, and then I do the Rep C, because those 2 are just the most important to me. And the rest will figure itself out, because your criteria is going to look so different. They're not going to get what they think they're going to get, and they don't. Maybe they will. I just work with poor people. They don't have millions of dollars most of the time. But I love this too, because they are really confident just signing whatever it is. And we get to the end and I'm like, that was a lot to take in. But what you guys got to know, you don't have to remember any of this. This is my job. Let's go look for houses. Like I got this. That's why you're hiring me. So review the contract. Be sure your buyer understands the contract. We do that up front personally. And I think it's worthwhile for you guys to practice that. You can get through that piece. I bet if you timed it, if you did it right and you just hit the highlights of the big things that are important, you could probably do it in 15 minutes.
The Rep C.
And probably 15 minutes for your buyer broker agreement, and then 30 minutes. Like you should be able to do it in 60 minutes total. Practice. I just know that I talk too much. Like once we get talking.
It's hard when someone says, I don't have a lot of time. How long does this normally take? And I'm like, oh, about an hour, but you always say like, but we could do a shortened version since we bought a home before. You know, you feel bad about taking so much of your time, but you also want to, it's valuable.
Yeah, it depends too, because I am really in depth with people who it's their first time. So if it wasn't, I might ask them, do you guys think it would be valuable to go through the current contract so that you know what it, and I just ask them, do you think it would be valuable? If it is, I'm happy to go through that. So you tell them why it's important, so that you feel totally comfortable and confident when we find the right house that you can, these are my scripts, that you can click, click, click when I send it to you on your cell phone. Would you guys like to do that now so it's easy? And that's really, and most of them are like, oh yeah, let's do that. Even sees, like, I'd have to say, it's not that I'm doing this because I want you to sign my contract. I'm doing it so that when we find the right house, you can feel really comfortable and confident just going click, click, click on your cell phone when I send you the contract.
You present it as an added value too, that like, hey, I know the contract really well. I just want to explain it to you. Here's why it's taking like an hour because it's about
Let me change your mindset on it. That's you saying why it's important to you. It's like, I am great. It's going to be like, you have to tell them why it's a value to them. It's focus on why does that matter to them that you know so much about it? And let them choose. Because if you were just spewing information at them, that's not going to be worth it. Some people for me are like, actually, no, you just do it. I don't want to know about it. So everyone's a little different, but ask them, would you find it valuable for us to do this and get their buy-in? And if they say yes, you don't have to justify why. They actually expect you to know the REPC because you make a ton of money. Okay. That's an expectation. It's like a minimum standard. That's our job. We make a lot of money. That's that Coach Angie just came out, but I was like, no, it's your job. You guys. And most of them, the people who want to work with you will align with that. So there's other people. I don't wear heels and I'm not selling Sunset. There are some buyers that might want that. I'm not their person. The people who work with me are like, she's got my back, she's got my data, she's that person. And even the millionaires that I work with, I think appreciate that I'm just me. I don't know if that makes sense. There is a minimum that we should be experts. That's our job.
I was going to say, you reminded me of when I was going through the REPC with it was a really interesting situation. These are people I've known forever.
Mm-hmm.
And we're really good friends. And originally they were going to do a for sale by owner. And so I just helped them as a friend at the beginning. I'm like, this is what I would do. They trust me. And I've done some things in the past where they, so I came in and I showed them what to do. And they started doing it. When it came down to it, they just couldn't sell their home. And so then they brought me on.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a negotiation between me and this other realtor. And I remember calling Clay Winder,
Mm-hmm.
saying, I don't know if I should fight for them. I've never fought for myself. If someone sees my value, then they do it. He's like, nope, you fight. You tell them why.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember sending them a text saying, hey, here's what I'll do for you. And I just started selling myself. And I'm like, I will stage your home. I will be there every day with you. I will swap out light fixtures. I probably shouldn't say that. Dean would say, start staying your life. But yeah, these are things like I'm
installing a water softener and there's no outlet now. So
but there were just like things I started like really doing. But when it came to like the REPC, I was confident up until that phone call doing the REPC. And I'll never forget, I started stumbling because I'm like, I can't remember what section it was. And we were going through it line by line. We're on a conference call because they had already moved. Or had they moved yet? No, they hadn't moved yet. But anyway, he just was so sweet. And he said, Sarah, we got you. Like, this is something I should be saying to them. He's like, we've sold homes before. We know the REPC. And I'm like, oh.
And they hired you because they trust you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but there was no judgment because I didn't know. Like you were saying, we make it, a lot of money. But I didn't know the REPC. That is a weakness of mine. And they knew it. And they were like, we got you. Like, we've done this before, Sarah. You don't.
And I say those things because I do think you should study them. And I do love that you have people in our lives. That's the thing, is like, take the time, do the work up front. The investment you do in learning it will pay you the rest of your career, the more that you invest in it. And there's no judgment, because I can tell you, I put $2,000 on the wrong line. Same piece of like, that is where the motivation is like, okay, we better really be confident to be able to work through it. And you know what's crazy is that we've written how many offers, but even everybody on our team, we still send it to a team member to look over it, because what if we missed a checkbox, or what if we did something? Like, we just still do. And I just feel like a second set of eyes on it, or does this wording make sense of what I'm trying to accomplish? Like,
You always do that.
mm-hmm. Yeah, like,
who writes your offers?
no, like my TC will manage the contract. I am not, I'm a believer you write your own offer. I'm a believer of that. So I think it serves you. I think then you don't wait for somebody else's time. You sit down and do it. And if you're skilled at it, the more you do it, you'll get faster. The first time sucks.
It took me all day.
All day, 8 hours. I
Yeah.
totally understand. But the time you invest in it, if you don't do it, even though it's hard, if you do that, can you imagine being in the business 5 years from now and it still takes 8 hours and you're waiting for somebody else to help you write an offer?
Like
Me and Jen Jorgensen were talking about it, because her TC was writing her offers, and now she doesn't have a TC, and now she's struggling getting her offers written or whatever contract stuff. And I hate feeling like I am held hostage because I don't have the knowledge. Like, in comparison to the restaurant, for me, I compare that to not flipping eggs. If you don't know how to flip eggs, you will always let a cook hold you hostage that you have to have them. And I'm like, no, give me your freaking apron. Like, that same, I believe the same piece on our things. Do I want to be the TC? No, it's not my strength. I don't, but I need to get that Repsy in front of them. I need to get it signed, and I need to get the seller to accept it. I need to be able to do those things. There are times maybe people put stuff together for us, but I think it'll serve you. You don't have to. It's your guys' choice, but I think it'll serve you in the long-term part of, if you're going to be in this business long-term, take the time to learn it and then decide if you want to do it or not.
So maybe we're in a good spot that we could write it, and then Jeanette's always said, you can write it and send it to me, or I'll write it.
I believe that is one of the best things. That's exactly like what we do, is like, just write it and send it to have her check it, and you will learn so much because you had to do it. It's a totally different experience than even reading it. But when you're writing it for a real offer, it just stays inside you, so different than like a case study.
Right.
Like, you doing it for yourself, for your clients, it will stick with you, and you will be a better agent. So
I do share something really quick.
You got to be fast, because I have a coaching call that starts at 11, and it's a MAPS coach, so it costs a lot.
I put my first offer in for my buyer. I worked on it all day, and then I met with my buyer to go over the Repsy, and that took an hour, which we should have put the offer in sooner. So that was a big aha for me, to go over the Repsy sooner, because we were doing that when we should have been putting the offer in. That was an hour of important time. Wrong order, and I didn't realize that until today.
Well, I think there's pieces that you guys are going to learn in all of it. We went through, if you're not here, we just went through the slides. The slides, you can go back in and take a look. There's just a checklist of those things. We got to talk about the details of kind of what that looks like. A couple of things that we didn't cover that I think is important, last tips, is keep the negotiations going. Okay. If you get a lowball offer for your seller, don't just be like, we're done. Counter it, even if it's a full price. Go back and rework the offer, rework with both sides to figure out how to make it a win. Rework it until it really is dead. It's our job to help them remember why they started, why they wanted to sell their house, why they wanted to buy. And that might not come together, but don't let it just be frustrated and then they walk away. Try to keep those negotiations and going back to what that might look like. So Thanks, you guys. I'm sorry I have to
Thank you,
run, but
thank you,
hopefully it was
Angie.
valuable.
That was great.
Really,
So
really
good.